Hi everyone, my name's Jennene and I'm a filmmaker and content creator. So I do a lot of filming and then of course editing, which is a big part of creating content. You know, there's no point having all this footage just sitting there without knowing how to then edit it. So video editing is the process of manipulating and rearranging video footage, audio, graphics and text to tell a story. It's come a long way since the old days of physically cutting and splicing negative together and gluing it together in order to sort of build a sequence or tell a story, which was a process that was kind of irreversible and didn't leave a lot of room for re-editing or making changes thereafter. Now we're lucky to have digital video and non-linear editing software, which allows an endless kind of amount of editing that can be done. You can sort of edit forevermore if you wish to. But you do have to, draw the line somewhere and then, say yes, it's finished now, and then render it and upload it to any number of different social media or online sites, or export it to DVD or USB for archiving. So the options are endless now with video editing, and it's a really amazing tool and a really creative process that can be very enjoyable. It can also be very fiddly and time consuming, and depending on your personality, I guess, you can kind of either just do like a fairly rough job and say, yep, that'll do, or you can go the whole hog and get very polished and very accurate and spend a lot of time doing your editing. So for today's purposes, we're going to be using the app iMovie, which is for Apple products. It comes free with all Mac products. And it's particularly useful with iPads or your iPhone, although it can be a little bit fiddly on an iPhone screen. So today we're going to be using iPads, and you can also use it on a MacBook or a Mac too. There is another workshop as part of the Digital Creation Hub, which will be focusing on editing with PCs. So if you're interested in that, you can register for that workshop as well. This one is specifically for Apple products. So if you've planned your video well, editing should be a staged process of laying your footage into a timeline and arranging it to match your storyboard that you may or may not have created beforehand. Or if you haven't storyboarded or scripted your idea, it'll be, you'll have a fairly good idea in your mind of the story you want to tell, and it should be a process of just laying it down in a timeline and then rearranging those clips, cutting, trimming, applying effects and transitions, manipulating the audio, adding music in, and then you can add graphics and titles, and then exporting your video ready to watch. Editing generally works in 3 stages. So you've got the story development and pre-production stage, where you'll organise all your assets, your video, your sound, your graphics, any photos that you might want to import into bins or folders on your device. And then you'll review your footage, lay it all down into your timeline and review it and make sure it's kind of telling the story that you want it to, and get it to rough cut stage, which is the next stage, where you start assembling your clips in exactly the right order and fine cutting and trimming bits off either end of your clip to suit the story, then adding transitions, which are, you know, the gap in between shots. Sometimes it'll be a straight cut from one shot to another, but other times you might want to put a fade in, which is kind of, or a dissolve, which goes, kind of fades from one shot and dissolves into another. So that can be sometimes a really nice transition to add. But it's not something that you want to overuse because it can look really cheesy too. So be careful with your transitions, but you can have a lot of fun sort of playing around with those. At rough cut stage, you also want to start adjusting your audio. So it's important to record good audio when you're filming your footage as well. Quite often when I'm editing, I'm wearing headphones so I can really critically listen to the audio. And you can do what's called a fade in, you know, where you have key points, and you can have your audio start from like a 0 sound level and then put another key point in and gradually have it fade in, so it's not a real jarring kind of a sound that just appears out of nowhere, and then you can fade it out at the end. You might have multiple layers of video and audio, and you fade them in and out of each other. So yeah, there's a lot to it, and as I said before, it's a very creative process, so it's up to you how much time you want to spend on it and how, you know, polished you want it to look in the end. Also at rough cut stage, you'll add music if you want music in your piece, and music I find is where I start to get really excited about an edit, because it just seems to add this other dimension, like it really lifts it. Especially when you find a really complimentary piece of music that you're allowed to use. Be careful, you know, of copyright and all those sorts of issues. In iMovie, they actually have a few copyright-free music samples that you can use, which are okay, I guess. But you might also want to purchase a track of music from an online stock music website. And rough cut, you'll also add any titles. You might like a title with the name of your video, or the name of a person that you've interviewed, or a location where your video is set at, to come up at the beginning of your clip. And you might like some credits at the end to say who filmed it, who edited, who, you know, gave you the music to use, etc., etc. You can also add lower thirds, which are like the little bit of text that you see pop up, often overlaid over the top of an interview, you know, so you see the person's name and the company they work for, or the, you know, what they do for a living, or what their interests are, sort of thing, just to give you a little bit of a idea of that, you know, the backstory of that person. And then you go on to fine cut stage, and this is where you really fine tune your clips, make sure they're exactly the right length, that all your cuts are, you know, they really move from one shot to another smoothly, and it's, you know, easy to watch and understand what's happening in the story. You might do a colour correction, which is not something you can actually do in iMovie, but professionally I use Adobe Premiere, and of course you can, you know, colour correct with the more professional editing software systems. You'll add any special effects or filters. You can add filters in iMovie, which is great, so that will give your footage a different feel depending on, you know, what kind of filter you add. You might want it all to be in black and white, or you might want it to look really grungy and gritty kind of thing, or you might just want to, you know, really up the vibrance, make it, your footage look a bit brighter and happier. You can do that in iMovie. And then you'll render and export your video ready to upload to your chosen platform. So today, as I said, we'll be using iMovie, and you'll be learning all that, hopefully, you know, the basics of it anyway. I've uploaded some footage onto some of the iPads for us to have a play with, so if anyone wants to follow along with me, I'll be using that same footage. Otherwise, feel free to use your own footage, and you know, I can come around one-on-one and help you. And yeah, there's the paperwork here, the documentation that I've written up, which I think is a fairly good guide to how to use iMovie, and you'll be able to go home and have this by your side, backing you up when you're practicing, and you know, continuing to cut together your story.